Hi, Meredith. How are you?
Hi, Quint. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Hello and welcome everybody to AI Script to Screen. The past 10 years, it's fair to say, has seen the world shifting beneath our feet in all sorts of ways in the UK and in the United States. It seems that AI is about to pop the maraschino cherry on top of all of this change. And someone who's been across this a lot is Meredith, who is an award-winning journalist. I think I can say that, and a podcaster
Without
with
me melting.
a podcast host of All That I've Met, which is a fantastic show. If you haven't checked it out, can I say public intellectual? I'm going to say it.
Oh gosh, don't
Meredith
say I'm an intellectual.
with a small I. She's navigated the choppy waters of all of this and more. And so today I'd like to welcome to the show Meredith. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Quint. Great. Thank you so much for
Well,
having me on your show.
you're welcome. Where are you? I have to say I'm really really hot here. It's London and it's the hottest day of the year. And you're shaking your head because you're in Virginia and it isn't.
Yeah, I thought we talked about this showing off thing, and let's move on from the weather. Even though I know we could really talk about the weather all hour, but
All
let's
right.
move on from the weather. Not a good weather day here.
Okay, so I mean, there's so much to talk about. Honestly, I'm gonna kick it off with this. Do you think journalism, as we understood it in the 20th century, is dying? How about that?
How about that? No, I don't. I think that, like many things, it's changing. And I don't think the change is due to AI. So I'm going to offer an answer to a question you haven't asked yet.
Okay.
Um, but as a young journalist, my first job was at Time Magazine. And I was there during the merger, the Time Warner merger, and really watched CNN from the beginning. And I come from a family of journalists. My father was a broadcast journalist. And there was Ted Turner's an extraordinary visionary,
Yep.
but 24-hour a day news, I don't think is deserving. So I just want to tell you a little story. When I was growing up, my dad was a local anchor for CBS News in New York. And I would go over to friends' houses and people's parents would say to me, "Oh dear, we really adore your father. He's so lovely, but we never watch him because CBS is so liberal."
Okay.
And it was something I heard my entire young life. But the difference between then and now is if you went to a dinner party, people had just watched the evening news like they would in Britain,
Mm.
and they would arrive with different opinions about the facts, but not different facts. And I
Yeah.
think what we have now is a crisis of facts. So it's not that journalism is dying. I think it's changed. And I think that some of us are trying to find pockets where it can exist where we've gone back to fact based
Yeah.
pieces. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. But of course, it opens up the whole hornet's nest of what are facts anymore. It seems that personal opinions being conflated with facts um, and alternative facts to quote the current sort of Trump administration. It's the truth, the truth, which I suppose used to be not dictated, but used to be defined or prescribed by big the news media, around which you could have facts, around that which you could have opinions, has been so sort of atomized by things like social media, which I'm sure we're going to talk quite a lot about. I mean
Right.
that's I mean I'm just looking out the window at my daughter and son. They're both 20 years old and they're friends, and I'm pretty sure they're getting all of their news from TikTok and Instagram.
Well, I'm gonna jump in and push back on that because
Okay.
I have children a little bit older than yours,
Yeah.
and I would say that one of the interesting things is I don't think they get all their news that way. I think, if you listen to interviews with Judy Woodruff, who says that a lot of young people are watching PBS NewsHour, but they're watching it on YouTube. They're not watching it on terrestrial television anymore.
Yeah.
My kids still, they read avidly. They listen to, I often get recommendations on things to read and listen to from my kids because they are searching for things that aren't opinion. And something you said earlier, actually, I just want to come back to before I forget. I think truth and facts are two different things. So the facts are the facts. The truth used to be sort of this probably fairly unilateral interpretation of the facts. And now I think truth has bent into opinion. And I think that's what's been conflated, truth and the facts. And, people talking about speaking their truth.
Yes.
I think that's all become very muddled and taken on a different meaning. But I think the young kids are certainly, I'll sometimes send my kids something and they'll send it back to me and say, Mom, that's AI. That's totally fake news.
Yeah.
And I will have been fooled by it. But I'm sure your two that are outside right now and my two are not as fooled by it. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I think as a video producer who is involved with AI and the world of deepfakes, for example, I think up to a point, up to fairly recently, I could spot with my the AI, if it was in front of me, I could really spot it. But I'm really getting to the point now where I can't tell the difference, and that's going to be challenging, I think, because if anybody can generate content and that content looks real, then I'm just worried about people producing bad actors, in other words, producing things which
absolutely, I think
wrong.
I think you're right. I think we're all worried about that.
So we were talking about I guess we were talking about truth, weren't we? And what's happening to truth. I know this is something you're quite interested in fact, I would say passionate about, truth and trust.
You would be right.
Yeah. Okay. Could you just riff away on your thoughts on truth and trust in this tricky time we're trying to navigate?
Sure. I mean, for what it's worth, I think AI is a really valuable technology. And I want to be super honest. I use it all the time. I use Claude. I pay for a subscription. I'm dyslexic, and so I use it often to proofread my work and to help me with notes. I use it for transcription, summarizing things when I've had long interviews. I will use it to check spelling. It's good at that. But I don't use it to write. And I think it's a great research tool. I think it should be woven into your work as opposed to taking over your work. I think that truth is really important to me as a journalist because it really matters to me that I do my best to make sure that what I write is factual. If I'm uncertain about something, I'll leave it out or I'll clarify that I am uncertain. I think that what's happening right now, and it probably will lead to ultimately putting a premium on facts and truth, is you have a lot of opinion, a lot of opinion that tends to reward sort of rage and sensationalism. People get a lot of followers. They are monetizing that sort of a platform. We're also seeing a lot of long-time personalities, far more known than I am, who have left traditional mainstream media and, for example, set up their own shop on Substack. And what I always tell people is, that's all well and good, and you can continue to follow somebody that you really like and trust, but know that the minute that they step away from a newsroom, it's opinion. And my essays, that's why I try and keep my essays as personal essays. Reported news that I publish in media outlets because I think we benefit from the team that you have in a newsroom. I mean, I'm rigorous with fact checking, but inevitably my editors will say, can you double check this, or would you say it quite this way? And I think that's part of what makes news reliable. So yeah, it's really important to me. I do think that the United States made a huge miscalculation when we gave social media companies a pass in fact checking what's on their platform. So there's legislation in the United States called Section 230.
Yeah.
And basically, Facebook, all these platforms argue, Twitter, we're not a media company. So don't hold us to the same standards that you would in ABC News, right? Mm-hmm. And what it's done is it's absolved them of the responsibility of making sure that what's posted on their platforms is factual. And because it was a while ago that this legislation was enacted, most people don't realize or don't think about the fact that it exists. So when they read things on these platforms, they think that there's some entity somewhere hiding behind a curtain that's fact checking, that's making sure these things are accurate.
Yes.
And that's just not the case. So I think what will happen, and hopefully sooner rather than later, is people will unfortunately be forced to put a premium on factual, responsible reporting, which really should be a public service and not a cost that's borne individually. Yeah. But we might have to go through that before it goes back to being a public service.
Yes, Section 230, we got off on the wrong foot with that, and it led to outrage and well, the battle for attention, and outrage and attention, outrage is the thing which will grasp attention. So it's tends to have polarized everything. And like you say, the social media companies just get a pass. It's not us. We're just the road. We're not the cars on it. We just provide the infrastructure. But certainly around healthcare, I mean that just doesn't seem to be good enough. I mean, today in the Guardian, and we've got a report there about perimenopause and how, because of social media posts on TikTok, girls as young as 30 are going into their GPs saying, am I having the perimenopause? And they're coming off contraception because they don't think they need it and falling pregnant, which is nuts, frankly.
I think health, in America, they go further. I remember my boys were born and raised in the UK, and when we moved back to America, they were watching television one day and they came in and they said, "Mommy, do you have restless leg syndrome?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Because this is the rubbish that they see on television. I think we're the only country in the world where it's direct to consumer advertising from the pharmaceutical companies. So people are supposedly, they're being told that they're being empowered with knowledge, but they're walking into their doctor's office in much the same way saying, well, this is happening, or shouldn't I be on this medication, or shouldn't I have that? And I think at some point, I think we're probably pretty close where we're just going to hit a wall. I mean, these are all should be public services, and your half an hour of nightly news, your CDC and the British equivalent telling you what you should and shouldn't be worried about, or how having some sort of infrastructure where you have information that's been vetted and is factual coming from a physician and not a 16-year-old on TikTok. I think, I long for those days. Call me nostalgic, but
no, I'm totally with you. Yes. And I wonder that the younger generation, they don't know any different than the world of the internet. When the smartphone was brought out, 2007, 2008, and they've been surrounded, so 17 years ago. So anybody in their 20s has always grown up with the internet, and they've grown up with this hydra head of news where they have such a mosaic of web of different inputs, of they have to pick their way through it, and frankly, who's got the time to do it? They're just gonna land on one and run with it.
I'm not sure. I was, one of my sons just graduated from law school, so we were all together last weekend. My boys are in their late 20s,
Oh yeah.
and they're not anomalies. They're just like everybody else, with social media and whatever. But it's really interesting. One they don't really have a huge presence on social media. They live pretty busy lives. They both met their respective partners. One's married, one's getting married in real life, which I suppose is a little unusual these days.
Yeah.
One was talking to me about restaurants and how he's so fed up with restaurant reviews. And I'm in the process of writing a big feature piece on Patrick O'Connell, who's probably one of the most celebrated chefs in America and has won every major award, 3 Michelin stars. And I've always been interested in chefs and food. And we were having this conversation, and the New York Times food critic a few years ago retired. And my son Teddy was saying to me, Mom, nowadays it's all like the reviews are dominated by 16-year-olds on TikTok. And if they don't get a good experience, they pan a restaurant. And he said, I'm just so tired of this whole vibe of whether it's reviewing a restaurant or reviewing a spa service or reviewing a hairdresser or whatever it is. It's if you catch someone on an off day or you happen to not like something, it's not the critical training that it took years and years and years and years for somebody to become an expert and really respected in reviewing certain services. So it's interesting. I've never actually been on TikTok. I'm admitting that in public. I just have never been on it. But to hear my kids complain about it, I don't know. I think this is going to catch up. I think that it's not sustainable, really. Is it? I don't know. You tell me.
I hope not. I hope it coalesces around a need for the truth of the North Star of truth that people hanker for, if only so that they don't have to just be so confronted with so many different opinions that they can't actually get sure-footed around these things. I mean, it seems like things which are so basic, really, when you look at them, are open to question. Black becomes white.
Welcome to my world in the United States under Donald Trump. I mean, seriously, you have to double check everything.
Gloves off. I mean, in the last 10 years, we started the top of this podcast with. In the last 10 years, I mean, in the UK, we've had Brexit, which basically knocked us off our GDP right down. We're out of Europe. We thought we were going to become best mates with the United States. Obama told us that if you're out, then you're at the back of the queue because the only reason we're dealing with you is to get into Europe. Then we had, we had Trump coming in, and then we had COVID. We had the whole raft of different things happening.
It's been a rough run for those of us of a certain age with less runway than others in front of us. I'm ready for this era to come on, guys, let's get back on track here. But, I think that the United States, for most Americans, want a close relationship with the UK. And what's gone on is, you guys voted on Brexit by the same sort of hair that Trump was voted in. So I'm not denying that there are a lot of people in America that love him, just like there are a lot of people in Britain that love Brexit, but it's not an overwhelming majority by any stretch. So I think there's a path back to reasonableness somewhere through all of this thicket.
I do hope so. What AI and the future of human authority, and what happens when AI can generate expert commentary infinitely? I mean, we're assuming now that we've got people who are generating newsworthy stories, but suppose it isn't. Suppose we've got an AI who's generating it, and maybe using an avatar in order to broadcast it. This idea of AI slop. I mean, to sort of merge the two together, we've got slopaganda coming out of the United States now via Trump, and it's a meme. People watch it, they grasp onto it, and they run with those ideas. I mean, right at the moment, we're in the middle of we're supposed to be right in the middle of the negotiations to end the Mexican standoff we've got in the Straits of Hormuz. And I mean, there's not much nuance around it, is there?
No, I think nuance is officially nuance, which was always on life support in America because we're not a culture that is really great at nuance or humor, self-deprecating humor. But I think it is dead for the moment. And I think you're right. I mean, you use AI in your job, as I just confessed I do. We use it in very different ways. And I think that there's something sort of wonderful about it. Again, if it's used to augment things and if we're really clear about how we use it. I think that, I'm not so good at spotting AI, but again, I'm going to come back to my kids and their friends and the younger generation, which seems to be everybody but me these days, are really good at spotting it because they are digitally native for exactly the reasons you said. They've all grown up with this. And I think that they are the biggest voting bloc. The Gen Z millennials make up the biggest voting bloc. Gen Z is soon to become the biggest consumer bloc. And they have very specific, they want experiences over things. They want to be defined by what they know and how they behave, by what they own. I hate this word because it sort of means everything and nothing, but they crave authenticity. They always talk about being authentic. Yeah. And they're the first ones to call out the AI slop. I will say what really bothers me in my day-to-day isn't, I'm not inclined to really subscribe to things or watch things that are rage baiting and all of that. It just doesn't, I don't have time, probably. It doesn't interest me. But one of the things that I find really makes me crazy is I'll sometimes send my son something I read and they'll write back and say, "Did you use AI?" Like, no, I didn't use AI. They're like, "Well, Mom, we know you've always used an M dash. Like 30 years I've always used it. It's like my signature move. You can read things I wrote 30 years ago, but it's very AI." Or, certain cadence in writing, "Mom, that sounds really AI." And I have to say, well, where the hell do you think AI got it from? Scraping the internet, published writers like me and various esteemed colleagues. So I do find that has, and I've seen writers who've written about this, where it makes me reread my things, and then I've occasionally fed an essay into Claude and said, "Does this sound like AI?" Yeah. And luckily, Claude will say, "No, Meredith, it sounds like your voice and not an AI at all," but who knows? I just think now those of us who don't use AI in a deceptive way are being forced to answer to people who think that we might use AI. And in other ways, I do some narrative consulting. Journalism doesn't pay the bills anymore, sadly. And I really enjoy working with companies and people and helping them tell their stories. A few times I've been asked to use AI on their, company systems where they've fed in documents, and I'll say yes, but I won't use it. Like, I'll go in to use it and I'll do what they ask me to do. And then when I see what's produced, it's often, as you say, slop. It's such rubbish. And I think, oh my gosh, I can't. And then I'll send back what I've written and they'll say, "Oh, thank you so much. It's great." And I don't even bother to get into the AI discussion. But I think that, it can be, it's just introducing a lot more friction in our lives. It's an extra couple of steps to ensure, to double check your work, to ensure if you did do some fact checking that it is indeed fact checking. That, in much the same way I don't Google people because I don't believe everything I read on the internet. I wouldn't go to an AI and say, "Is this 100% factual?" I might ask, "Can you give me 3 pieces of primary research material that I can fact check against?" But I think it just makes life a little bit harder, just like the internet did when it first came in. It was like a little harder to navigate and to get things right. I don't know. How do you find your interaction with AI?
Well, I interacted with AI from 2020 when there was that video from Sora came out with it was a showreel produced by Sora showing what they could do, and there was a girl in a leather trench coat walking through the streets of Japan in a rainy night. I hope some people are nodding their heads to this, because it really was an example of what AI could do. And as a production company, we absolutely lost it, because we thought, what are they doing? You know, AI is supposed to be coming for the accountants, and they're supposed to be coming for the professional classes. They're not supposed to be coming for creatives like us. And then there was this sort of revulsion against it, and a revulsion against the copyright and the IP and we thought, well, it's never ever going to catch on. It can't possibly catch on. There's too many legals, and never mind the ethics around it. But bit by bit, it's creeping and creeping and creeping. And just, you know, right now we've got on Friday the 1,000 person team that created the Marvel Cinematic Universe all got made redundant. And my own company, we just kept getting asked for it. Can you do this? Can you do this? And eventually we just had to say yes, because otherwise we're going to be, you know, doing traditional video and animation, and everyone else is going to be doing AI. And I was really worried. I have a duty to care to you know, my staff. And so we said, yes, okay, well, let's lean into AI and try it and see what happens. But I have to say, as a company which now produces AI, it's got as many problems as it's got solutions. Yes, it's more cost effective to produce AI, but you do have these problems around it, copyright issues and IP issues, which
absolutely
we try. We're using enterprise licenses with the software companies that we're working with, but and anybody that uses us has got peace of mind that we're doing the very best we can. But can we guarantee it? Not really, because the second that client puts out an animation that's got Felix the cat in it, 30 seconds later someone could grab that and you've got Felix the dog, you know, the same time next day. Which is a long-winded answer to your question, Meredith.
No, I think everything you say really resonates with me. It, as I said, it throws up more friction in the creative process, and it is so far from accurate. You know, it's as fallible, if not more, than human beings. And you know, it definitely, I mean, as a creative, I find that there's a lot of just more time that I have to spend now, either proofreading my work to make to wonder, you know, does this sound now, you know, I'm thinking, does this sound like AI? I mean, of all the things I've worried about publishing work over the years, hitting that send button and thinking, is this going to be the time my work doesn't get published? And now to introduce a whole nother layer of anxiety, I think is difficult, and much what you've described with the anxiety with producing content as well.
Yes. People, I mean, I think they, at least in our industry, it's been overhyped. All of the software around animation video production, they're all overhyping it all the time, saying it can do this, it can do that. All the showreels are absolutely fantastic, but until you get a client or two clients, you've got the ad agency who you're making it for their client. So you've got two, and maybe let's just, for argument's sake, say that it's got to be delivered on the 2nd of June for a conference. You have a workflow which is really contingent upon the ability of AI to do what you've asked it to do. And if it doesn't, and it doesn't do it in a timely manner, everyone's having a heart attack. You're concerned about it. The client's concerned about it. The client's client probably doesn't know what's going on, and we're all having kinetic fits trying to get it right. But and we end up putting more people onto it and working longer hours in order to get it right. Because
I think that was the point I was going to make, is that I don't know how cost effective it is in the end, because at the end of the day, when I was asked to use it to speed things up and it was producing rubbish, I just did the work and didn't bill for the extra hours because
Right.
you're in this conundrum. Like they want to save money, but I'm not willing to produce rubbish work. So where do you go with that? And I mean, that probably makes me the least commercial person on the planet, but I think it is a conundrum. And also, when you talk about having to put more people on, and the expectation now is, well, you can do this in a few days because you're going to use AI to make
Yeah.
this whole thing that used to take months.
Yeah.
For me, when I'm commissioned to write a feature piece, I just reposted a piece on cemeteries this morning because it's Memorial Day here in America.
Yeah.
And that piece took me 4 months to write. And
Oh,
it's not
wow.
because I'm daft, it's because when you talk to people about how they honor their dead, and I was reporting in a county that still doesn't have an integrated cemetery. It was the seat of the conservative South. And, these are really sensitive hot button issues. You have to drive and go and meet these families and sit down and spend time with them and earn their trust and listen to their stories and talk to their relatives and walk the fields and see the old homesteads. And, it takes time to build people's trust. It takes time to understand somebody's story, and it takes time to sort of honor what somebody's entrusting you with. And AI can't do that. I mean, it just, like, if you really, an AI isn't going to be able to have, they don't have inflection points, they don't have body language, they don't have things that make you warm to somebody or trust them or become engaged in their stories. So for me, it's a tool. I just wish the rest of the world would realize it's a tool. It's not a substitute, really.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned cemeteries and those who've passed away. One of the biggest lifts, one of the biggest upticks in inquiries we've had is bringing people back from the dead. So, I mean, commercially, we've got Val Kilmer, who's going to be in a film this summer. I can't remember the name of the film, but he obviously died 2 years ago at the age of 65 with throat cancer. But he's coming back. They're recreating him, and we've got 4 quotes out of CEOs. I think all of them are CEOs. So, for example, if you have I can't name check them because it just wouldn't be appropriate, but
Right.
if you have a company that's got a 200-year-old history and there's an oil painting in a manor house, we can bring that oil painting to life and have him talk at an AGM about how the values of the company have lasted for the last 200 years. We have another project which we're working on at the moment where we've been asked to take how to explain this without actually giving the game away, a hairdresser who has, actually I can't say, I better take that out. We've got a person who passed away 2 years ago who was a CEO of a company, and we've been asked to recreate them so they can lead an AGM. Now, how do we do that? We just grab all of the digital content from YouTube and all of the radio interviews that he did, and we can create him such that it's almost, well, I mean, I'll say it's photorealistic. It's when we finish with it, you're giving a hard push to tell that it's AI. Now, this is, for me, I think this is fantastic because I think charities and NGOs will be able to use brand ambassadors with the permission of the estate, so that you can, even if they've passed away, for example, with the illness that they were advocating for, they can still, even though they've passed away, the charity can still use their likeness in order to keep awareness going in ways which we haven't seen yet, but it's possible to do that now. And in the same way, I think probably the estate will look at somebody who has passed away and be open to maybe using an actor in a film or in a commercial capacity, for the benefit of the estate. So these things are, they're quite sort of ghoulish, quite Black Mirror, But I mean, they are out there now. That didn't exist 6 months ago. It's only become possible in the last few months. How do you feel about that? Does that chill your
Um,
blood?
no, it makes me sad,
Mm.
actually. I think that the beauty of life is that it is finite and there's so much that we have to live and to reconcile in a lifetime. And some people's life is cut tragically short,
Yeah.
and people are dealt awful hands with disease and war and all sorts of things. But that is it's the it's the finiteness of and the cruelty in a way of life that also makes life beautiful and and inspires gratitude for every day that you have with your loved ones, with your friends. I think that, when I think of Val Kilmer, who was arguably one of the best actors of his generation
Mm.
and died way too young, the beauty of Val Kilmer is what he gave to a performance, and each one that was different and well considered, and also what was brought out in him by his colleagues. Acting is a very collegial profession.
Yeah.
Writing, even though it's solitary, being a reporter is very collegial, even being a novelist,
Yes.
because you rely on your experiences to inform your writing. You rely on your editorial team to be candid with you and to help you produce a great product, and even your publicist, your publisher. So I don't know. I don't want to be adversarial with you. You're responding to a market, what a market needs, and you have a
Mm.
business. And I don't think it's not a moral judgment that I have. It just really makes me sad. And I also feel like if somebody, say, was a spokesperson for Parkinson's and died of Parkinson's, it's really the people who knew them and loved them to keep what they fought for alive. And that really passes to the people that love you and know your story.
Mm.
And there is a beauty in that. We've all have in our lives, we've lost people that we've loved, we've lost pets that we love. I heard about this with pets too, that people are doing
Oh,
this. And
really? Oh, yeah.
yeah, and even with like now cloning pets so that you have the same pet over and over again. But I think that it's kind of part of this trend, like Facebook, where people, I had a Facebook page when it first came out, and I remember waking up one day and there was like 5 or 6 thousand people who were my friends on Facebook, and I had this moment of thinking, well, who are all these people? And I'm sure they're lovely people, but they weren't my friends. They weren't people I never knew, and
Yes.
I literally dissolved my Facebook page.
Oh,
And I
really?
think that, yeah, I did, and I'm not on Facebook, but I think that there is no substitute for being with people and experiencing the joy and the sadness of relationships and loss and birth and death. And that is part of what makes us human. And we are sentient, and we do have complex ways to communicate, and we do form incredible bonds. And I think it'll be very easy to minimize
Mm.
loss in a way if you can just press a button and have that person acting in another movie or popping up at an AGM. I think as a gimmick, when you talked about the person whose portrait is, I'm thinking of Fleming's or something like,
Yeah.
who's got their ancestor portraits up on the walls and the
Yeah.
bank's been going for 200 years. There's something gimmicky and fun to bring back an ancestor to talk about, well, here were our values now and here's how they've changed or stay the same. But I think as a matter of integrating that sort of thing into everyday life and into all sorts of creative and business avenues, it makes me sort of sad. And
Mm.
as a mom, and it, I think about like, well, what are we creating for? Is technology really making our lives so much better? Just one more point I wanted to make in apropos of all of this. I was listening to a clip of an interview that's going to be released soon with Christopher Nolan, the filmmaker.
Yeah.
He's never owned a smartphone. He has a flip phone. He does not use email. He is never on the internet. And I would say he's one of the greatest filmmakers of his generation. And there's limitless creativity and talent. And he talks about it. And the interviewer was Scott Pelley of 60 Minutes said, well, is that sort of a deliberate rejection of all of this other technology? In a way, Scott said, I'm envious that you can live that way. And Christopher Nolan said, in my lifetime, we all have lived that way. I just haven't changed. I'm just living the way we all lived. And, Quinn, I'm sure you can remember how exciting it was to get a written letter, to get a phone call, to have a landline ring. And as a kid, it's for you and maybe a girl you liked or a great friend inviting you to a party. And those were all moments of like fun and joy. And I worry that that's been sort of the next generations have been robbed of that in a way.
Yeah, I suppose we are in that sort of liminal space. We both have occupied that time pre-internet, and we're by virtue of, as we speak, we are using the very latest technology to record, and you're in Virginia and I'm in London, and we're using software to do this, and the software will be used to put out a podcast. But we can both of us remember a map, and both of us can remember the various different iterations of technology as they came around. Rotary phones, and then smartphones, and the much simpler time, the slower paced time, can we say? I suppose.
I don't know. The robber barons that were building the United States and railroads and empires in the UK and across the world, I don't know that it was a slower time. And empires still got built, and companies still soared to great heights, and people still were able to succeed. I think there is certain, like the railroad was definitely something that improved people's lives. And I think being able to talk on a video call, I think most people would say that improves their lives. I'd never used it before COVID, and I was in a different place than my children when we were all quarantined.
Oh, right.
And it was, I don't know why I never used video calls before, but I didn't. And now, like, I love talking to my children on a video call. And isn't it lovely to be able to see you and have this conversation? Because, as I was saying before, even though I'm not sitting in front of you, I can see your facial expressions. I can see your body language when I say something, and it's a more natural way to converse. So I think there are technologies that genuinely enhance our lives. I don't know what Facebook has done to our lives other than make a lot of people miserable and a lot of teenagers insecure. And Instagram, I have an Instagram account. I don't have the app on my phone, for the simple reason, a couple of years ago, I woke up one day and I thought, am I the only one who's not on a yacht in Capri? It's like you go through Instagram and everybody's life is so perfect and everything is so perfect and their holidays, and they're constantly having just roaring time and luxury and fun. And that's just not my reality. And I found it just made me feel bad. It made me feel bad. And I think a lot of people do feel bad on a lot of these platforms. And when you read about kids now, I grew up in New York City, so it's not like I grew up in fields where I was running free, but I walked to school every day and I saw my friends, and we went to Central Park and we were out all the time and we made plans to go to movies. And now they're saying that kids don't interact as much because they're all home alone on their screens or gaming or on their phone or on TikTok or making videos. And I'm not a scientist, and I'm not a trained like you are in behavioral sciences, but I don't necessarily think that's enhanced anybody's life. And so I don't think all technology is equal.
No. Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I worry about where this is going in terms of the communications around it, in terms of being able to know what is reality and what isn't, then being bombarded with so much information, trying to have the critical thinking to evaluate it, and and maintaining some sort of sure footing amidst the blizzard of information that's coming through. But it does when we start talking about it, it does seem slightly very idyllic, the time that we grew up in. I mean, I think partly it's because the world seems so bloody difficult right now as well. I mean, mind you, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis, didn't we? So we didn't have it, and the Cold War, of course. So, I mean, it wasn't all plain sailing.
No, I think there's always going to be strife and conflict, but I think we don't have a moment to catch our breath now. As you said, it's almost like an assault. And I think the 24 hours news cycle did that because you have to fill those minutes.
Yeah.
You have to make it pay. And so you tell the same story over and over again, but you can't really keep doing that. So then you have to have opinions, and you have to have talk shows, and you have to have people give it. And it's to a point where your head is going to explode because you don't have a chance to step back and think, that's an interesting story. Let me sit with that for a minute, and how do I think about that?
Meredith, develop that point for me, would you? Because that's interesting. So that was CNN came out with that during the Iraq War, right?
Yeah, just before. Yep.
Just before, and then, and I suppose the Iraq War really put the wind in its sails because there was something happening. It was dramatic. It was highly photogenic, without being too crass.
Filmic, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the idea of 24 rolling news, like you say, became, well, you've got the medium there. You've got to fill those hours in order to make it a success, so the advertisers will keep giving you the revenue. And what's the best way? One of the most cost-effective ways of doing that is to have everyone with an opinion. So you just ask anybody, and that really annoys me when I see people getting asked, just talking heads, well, you live in Bournemouth. What's your opinion? Well, I don't know.
And it's the same people all the time. They recycle the same talking heads all the time. At least on a lot of these platforms they do. And I think the 24-hour news, in an ideal world, and I have to say, I was horrified, BBC now, like I have to pay for it. I used to just turn on the World Service and listen to it on my phone, and having lived in Africa for so many years, BBC World Service was my go-to. I love it.
Yeah.
And I think in an ideal world, and you can call me a socialist or whatever, but there are just certain things that should not be about profits. That doesn't mean that people can't be paid well for their work, but news is a public service. Health is not just a public service, but a human right. And we have led the way in America in making this be really trying to make these businesses, some more successfully than others, like majorly profitable. Yeah. And if you had told me 20 years ago that I would be living in a rural area, writing for a local paper, I write for several local papers, but in a county, for example, that has 7,000 people, I would have said, yeah, okay, whatever. No, I don't see that happening. But I have to tell you that I do. And these newsrooms have been saved by nonprofit organizations that citizens have clubbed together and raised the money to save them. And let me tell you something statistically about communities that save their local papers. They have higher rate of voter turnout. They tend to have lower taxes because they have engaged citizenry that gets hold of the facts and holds their county administrators accountable. Less divisiveness, more cohesion in making decisions about local infrastructure. And if anybody thinks that I work with really unsophisticated people, my editor used to edit the Washington Post magazine section. Yeah. My editor, who's been assigned to all of my pieces, is Paul McGough, who was editor of the Sydney Morning Herald and is a multi-award winning foreign correspondent. These are people who live in my community, and they're all over. It's not just my community. There are smart, learned, interesting people all over who they just happen to be here and volunteer their time. And, Paul McGough is probably one of the most celebrated journalists I've ever worked with personally as an editor. And I've worked with some pretty big editors.
Yeah.
So that's my life in a small town. And I think it is possible to get back to that. And it is possible to do it with nonprofit journalism. And maybe it's just going to take enough people getting fed up with the slop and the nonsense that we're being asked to tune into.
Yeah. Meredith, we're going to have to leave it there. That's all we've got time for. But can I just say it was wonderful to talk to you. And
You
to
too,
have
Quinn.
this
Thank
opportunity to chase these ideas around. It's really heartwarming. And I love what you were saying about all of this. And I sincerely hope that that there will be a revision on the trajectory that we're on, and we can snap back to some better form of general conversations as good as this.
Thank you. Well, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you, and I feel very honored that you asked me to come and talk to you on your show. So thank you so much for the opportunity.